Well, I think that's also what sets it apart from, I mean, in terms of thinking of the way in which this trope is articulated in the different Abrahamic traditions. Because the Canaanites obviously didn't have it so good. They were not really, didn't have the status of the Ansar, right? So yes, even in the case of Pakistan, the Ansar are mentioned, right? And in this time period in particular, right? So both in Sindh in particular, but also in the Punjab and in Sindh, where most of the migrants are received, they are referred to as Ansar in these first few years, right? So there's this connotation of hospitality. But that is, and that also was part of Intisar Hussein's discourse at the time, right? But as time has passed, but that would rely on in that, for that to be prominent in the narrative, it would have to be because you're thinking of the creation of a new community, of a new virtuous community, right? As time has passed, Hijrat for Intisar Hussain has come to mean more and more exile, as I'm saying, right? Separation, Hijr. That connotation of Hijr has come to dominate more. So there is not much of much importance of the Ansar in that narrative.
Yes, sir. I would like to take you back in the beginning of your presentation. You said that Pakistan is a fruit of a contingency, if I understand you very well.
Yeah.
If that is the case, I would like to know in whose imagination was it to become a community?
In whose imagination it was to become a community? Well, it was already a hypothetical community, right? And hypothetical is the operative term here, right? That's what was being posited at the all India level. And there's a great book on this, The Great Partition, right, which takes you through this entire time period. But as a result of these developing, I mean, first of all, what we came to call communal conflict in this region dates from the latter half of the 19th century. That's when it begins, right? And it has a lot to do with the colonial census. I know more and more people in the post-colonial world are paying attention to the effects in terms of the formation of political identities that exist today, right, to this period in the latter half of the 19th century when census technology were first deployed, right? In India, I think it was under the British, in 1871, I think, was the first all-India census. This dramatically transformed the nature of political identities and the way in which people thought of communities to begin with. But really, you know, between that and the partition, a lot of other developments take place. But within this time period, in the 1940s, there's more and more of a sense, and Pakistan is supposed to capture an all-India Muslim community. Such a community never, of course, existed, right? And they tried to force it into existence. And part of the recent historiography of South Asia has been precisely about how communities are forced into existence. And I mean the word force quite forcefully, right? It basically is precisely about, by killing off other people, ethnic cleansing and all that, that you come to realize what you're calling a community, right? Certainly modern community, right? So it wasn't any single person. I could tell you that in 1930 whatever, there's this fellow who came up with the name Pakistan, right? But it was simply laughed at by people in the Muslim League, the people who then, as Jinnah, the quote that I'm giving you from 1943, saying is foisted upon us, right? So it's only later that it comes in, people take ownership of it. And even then, people have very different ideas. Somebody thinks Pakistan is basically would be equivalent to the Mughal Empire at its peak, right, under Aurangzeb. So you're hoping that it would stretch from Afghanistan down to Kanyakumari in the south, right? I mean, this would all be Pakistan. But there are very different ideas and senses of community that are operating. And the actual historiography that we have doesn't take into account precisely this diversity. the fact that people just simply didn't know what was going on.
Anyone else? Okay, hi, Nauman.
Yeah.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. I had a question about the lost object, and I think running under, of course, the surface of your discussion of melancholia was Freud, right? Freud on melancholia as being unable to fully lose the object in a way. But I would like you to, if you could, speak further about what exactly is the lost object for you in your discussion of nostalgia. Is culture the lost object? Is experience the lost object? Because you're clearly speaking about it in a very different way from those who consider, like when you talked about Coca-Cola and Sharbat as the lost object, right? You're not here fetishizing, in a way, particular objects. So could you speak a little further about how what exactly is constructed as a loss in the kind of melancholy you're talking about? It's not the nation, it's not the object. Can you say a little more about it?
Right. Well, part of what was to come later was precisely a section on how there's a layering, right, in terms of nostalgia. It doesn't have any particular, it can have. So, for instance, he can be nostalgic about this Sharbat of Tohme Rehan. In his memoir, right, he misses this quite a bit, right? It could be an insect, Bir Bahuti, right? This rain insect that you find in South Asia that is increasingly becoming invisible, right? Well, it being exterminated, really. I mean, I used to play with this insect when I was a child, but it's gone. I miss it too. So it could be just an insect, but it could be this a sense of an entire civilization. So there's a layering that goes on both in the melancholia as well as in nostalgia, right? So it doesn't have a fixed object as such at all.
Okay, so you talked about binational sovereignty and how you can have like more than one identity under the same state instead of clinging back to the past, trying to build something for the present and for the future. My question is kind of political, but at the same time like national. I don't know what the difference between them are. But anyway, so how would that apply to the situation between Israel and Palestine today? Can two states exist under something that you would call binational sovereignty?
Or well, that would be the one-state solution. Binational sovereignty would be the one-state solution.
Yeah, or is it too wishful thinking for the Palestinians to cling back to the past of their identity?
I don't think that. In fact, it seems to me that which is the newest often resonates with that which is the most past. And Professor Patrick Lord has just left, right? He writes about mysticism. And there was a great deal of linkage between somebody like Walter Benjamin, between modernism and this sense that in order to really be new, you had to inherit the most ancient thing. The very source had to be enlivened in the present, right? In order for something new to really come into existence, the source, the origin, has to become alive again. Now, that's when something new comes into existence, right? So there's no, to my mind, right, the idea that there is some kind of contradiction between looking to the past and looking to the future, right, is part of the problem in the way that we think. So binational sovereignty, right, in the case of binational sovereignty, you know that when Zionism first came on the scene, right, Orthodox Jewry, right, talking in the 19th century, as well as, especially in Palestine, right, the Jews who lived there, rejected Zionism, right, out of hand, right. So it's another sleight of hand on the part of the Zionists to make us think that there is some kind of necessity between being a Jew and being a Zionist. Obviously not, right. So when it first came on the scene, it was completely rejected by almost all Jews, right. So, to my mind, it is precisely by looking back to that lost past, right, that something new and the vision of a binational sovereignty could actually come into existence. In fact, some of the most hardcore anti-Zionist academics that I know are basically Jewish historians working on the medieval period, right? They're hardcore anti-Zionists because they have an entirely different vision. They're able to have an entirely different vision of what it meant to be Jewish, right, from this pre-modern period. So to my mind, I don't care if somebody thinks it's impractical or it's not really possible. To me, it's cynicism to think, right? Because the fact of the matter is there's a lot going on in the world today, right, which if we don't completely dramatically change, we're all going to be finished anyway, right? So as far as I'm concerned, hoping for the impossible, right, is what we need to be doing. Binational sovereignty, right, that is one state in Palestine, is really the only hopeful solution. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.